Good to have you with me. Good to have you with me. And again, I would love it if you would take a moment in the chat box. Find the chat box. Don't use the Q&A if you can find the Q&A, because I never check the Q&A. It's too hard to keep my eye on too many things. So if you find your chat box, I'd love to know who you are and where you're from. If you're comfortable sharing with me what your background is in holistic health, I would love to know that too. Now, the reason for that is that when you let me know what your background is, I can tweak this presentation on the fly and I can make it more appropriate for you. I'm going to invite you to turn off distractions. So I mean, if you're actually watching this on your phone, don't turn your phone off. I am going to put my phone in airplane mode. I love my mother desperately. She always seems to phone when I'm teaching. She doesn't even know my schedule. She's just got that mom sense. So I put my phone on airplane mode because she'll leave a message and I can call her back. Really important that you get rid of the distractions, because I'm going to share with you so much information tonight. And for you to be focused is going to be a good investment of your time. And Loriana, I hope I said that right. You're a nutrition coach. Fabulous. Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to have you with us today. So are you ready to rock and roll this thing? Yeah. Now, again, we're a small group, and that means that we need lots of interaction to keep the energy up here. And we've got Lydia from Lethbridge. Lydia, so good to meet you. I know we've chatted on Facebook a little bit, and I mentioned on Facebook that Lethbridge is just a couple hours away from me. I've got a son who lives in a small town near Lethbridge. His teenage sons play very competitive soccer, so every now and then we end up in Lethbridge for soccer games. And so I was just in Lethbridge. We had dinner at Firestone's. Oh my goodness, was that food good? Lydia, if you haven't been to Firestone's, seriously, they've got this strawberry thing going right now, and really the food is amazing. So if you're looking for a good dinner out, Firestone's could be it. So today we are going to talk about how iridology can be of help to you in your health coaching business. And we're also going to talk about some strategies that can help you create your client programs better, to work more efficiently in your office. And again, I really like to tweak these presentations on the fly. So thank you both for introducing yourselves and letting me know where you're from. It's so much nicer to feel like we're friends on this program that we're doing together. So let's dive right in. We're just going to dive right in, like into the deep end, and away we go. So a lot of holistic health practitioners face challenges in their business. One of the ones that I hear over and over and over again is they do not feel confident when they're with their client doing their client sessions. So do you have the confidence to actually make recommendations when you're right in your session? Now, you might be fully graduated, you might still be in process of getting your training and all that good stuff. But along the way, you've got to do some practical work, right? And so the question is, do you feel confident in what you already know to be able to use that information to make recommendations right when you are with your client? This is really important, because the people who don't feel confident often say, I feel like an imposter. So you've probably heard that term, imposter syndrome, right? And that is the thought that circles in the back of your brain, and you're saying, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, what gives me the right to tell this person anything? We want to come back to this idea in a few minutes to talk about ways to help beat imposter syndrome, to just move out of that syndrome, because who needs it really, right? If you've got training, you don't need it. The second problem we see is that you might find that you spend a lot of hours outside of your actual client time, that with you're face-to-face with your clients, creating their nutrition programs or their herbal programs or whatever your specialty is. So if you're currently seeing clients, I want to know in the chat box, this is true confessions, how many hours outside of your actual client appointments are you spending creating client appointments. So you see a new client today and you've gathered all the information. Do you go off on your own time and create a protocol? And if you do, how many hours do you spend doing that? I want to see that in the chat box, because that's going to also help me direct the way the rest of our time together goes. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that way back at the outset, I used to spend 3 to 4 hours of time that I wasn't being paid for every one paid hour creating client programs. I usually do recommendations in the 1 hour session. Loriana, amazing that you get recommendations done when you're with your client. You are light years ahead of probably 75 or 80% of the nutrition coaches that are out there. I spoke with one nutrition coach who, well qualified, well trained, said she spends 20 hours for every one paid hour. Amazing. So I couldn't believe it when I heard that. Like, how do you make a living this way? I knew what she was charging. It's like, good thing your husband has a job, right? So yeah, wow is right, 20 hours. I couldn't believe it. But it's really common. I usually hear the term of 3 or 4 hours, just like I started out. And for those of you who might be thinking that that's how it's supposed to be done, we're going to talk about why we think that sometimes and how to stop doing that. But I want you to think for a minute, if any of the people who are on your A team for your own health, you know, your dentist, your physio, your chiropractor, your massage therapist, whoever you work with, do they give you free time? You pay for an hour and they just tack on another 2 or 3 or 4 hours? I think not. I think not. So we're going to come back to this in a few minutes as well. Problem number 3 that I see a lot of in people who are trained as herbalists or nutritionists or even naturopaths is that they're frustrated with constantly having to find new clients. Clients will come in for 1 or 2 visits and then they disappear. So you're constantly having to find new people to bring into the pipeline, which it's a side of business that we often have to find new clients. I've tried so many things. I've been in this business for like 4 decades, just over 4 decades. And I've done it all, from the free lectures for not-for-profit organizations to free lectures at fitness studios to trade shows, to you name it, I've done it. And what I've found is that there's a challenge there. Most of us who are holistic practitioners, and maybe this is you too, are a little bit introverted. That's why we like the one-on-one kind of work or the small class kind of work. And so trade shows were massively hard, thousands of people swarming around, and it really hard to keep my energy to myself, so to speak, and to do that attracting thing. I found that very challenging. And oh, that's weird. I just got a strange message on my other screen. I'm going to turn that screen off because it's distracting me. There we go. Finding places to give free lectures. What I have found is when I do that is I don't get clients from it. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes when we kind of solve this problem. But you don't often get good follow-up from that kind of thing. Flyers. I did flyers. Stats on flyers. You have to deliver the same message to the same address every 2 weeks for 7 times to get a 1 to 2% return. So you'll get phone calls from 1 to 2 of those addresses if you deliver 200 addresses. It's a lot of time and a lot of money for a maybe, right? So the real question here is not so much what have you tried, it's why do we have to keep doing that? Why do we have to keep finding new clients? Where are your clients? Oh, I just need to shrink a screen here to see what I'm working with. There we go. Are most of your clients only coming in for 1 or 2 appointments? I'd love to know that from you. If you're seeing clients, are you finding that they're coming in for 1 or 2 and then they're disappearing? You know, I did figure this out a long time ago, and what I figured out has actually made it so that I've got clients that have been with me for 39 years. I've got many 3-generation clients where I worked with the mother who is now the grandma, and I worked with her when she was having her babies, and those babies are now having babies. So that's really fun to have multi-generations. We're going to circle back to these questions about why do you have to keep finding new clients all the time? Number 4 is, do you ever have that feeling because your business might not being as successful as you want it to be, that, you know, that niggle in the back of your brain that is saying, you should just get a real job? Why would you be thinking that? What's not working that's making you think you should get a real job, and why is your job not actually a real job? I work with single, usually one-time clients. Okay, Loriana, would you like to change that? Loriana, would you like to have your clients actually come back to you for 4 or 5 appointments, and then they might fade off for a few years, but then as they age, their bodies change, and then they come back for 4 or 5 more appointments, and you're doing legitimate, honest work with them every time? Would having repeat business like that work for you? Let me know if it would or not. I would love that. Some of you have just joined us. Welcome. So good to have you with us. And Lorianne is saying, yes, that would work for you. Awesome. I'm going to encourage all of you to play in the sandbox with me. We are always a small group. And so when I ask questions, I love it if you answer. And even if you ask me questions back, let's play together in that chat box, because you'll find the more you ask, the more you answer, the more we interact, the more you're going to get out of me, and the more alive I will become. So that's very cool. So problem number 5 isn't really such a problem. Maybe you're here tonight because you're in my dynamic iridology assessment system for holistic health professionals group, and you just, I shouldn't minimize that, you want to learn iridology from a live instructor who will mentor you well beyond the course completion. Is that maybe what you're looking for as well? Not just business tips of how to work more efficiently, which you'll get some of those today, but are you actually looking for a live instructor, not someone who's just going to teach you with recorded videos or send you a CD pack, but someone who's actually interacting with you in every lesson to help you get what you need? And Lydia is saying, yes, please. Yes, Lydia. Yes, Lydia. Excellent. Because we'll talk about why that could be important. So here are the things that we've mentioned so far. And I want to know which of these things are problems that you might be struggling with right now. You don't feel totally confident when you are face-to-face with your clients. You give your time away. You create programs outside of your paid client time. Are you struggling with your clients only come in for 1 or 2 appointments and then they disappear? Do you have that voice in the back of your brain that says you should just get a real job? And or do you want to learn iridology with a live instructor? Give me the numbers in the chat box. Which of those, you can have more than one, are things that you are in the back of your brain as we're working with you today? So many of these, the first 4, are really common problems that practitioners suffer with, and I see it a lot, and I use the word suffer legitimately. You're not alone if you are struggling like that. And so, you know, the more I know about where your struggles are, the more I can support you tonight. All righty. We've got some shy people with us. You don't even have your cameras turned on and you're still being shy. I'm glad you're here, even if you are shy. I really am. We're going to look at solutions for these problems. But first, I have a little gift for you that I'll give to you at the very, very end of our time together tonight, since you're being very shy and very quiet. And this is, the gift is going to actually help you to start giving the right amount of information in a session, to encourage your clients to come back for more than 1 appointment. And it's going to help you stay on track so you don't end up giving your clients way more than they need and going off in all kinds of tangent directions, because, you know, that's a problem that many of us have. So if you are committed to staying to the end to get this little gift, I'd like to see an I'm committed in the comments box. Just drop the comment, I'm committed. And that will be great. And then at the end of our time together, I'm going to give you the link to download this. And Lydia's committed. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you. You know, here's the real problem. You ready to hear this? When I figured this one out, and Marissa's committed. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you. This is the problem, and it is a huge problem. For those of you who've completed your nutrition training or your naturopathy training or your herb training or whatever your modalities are, where you're working one-on-one with clients, most of us in school were not taught how to create programs correctly. I know that sounds like an, oh my goodness, really? No, tell me it isn't so, right? But it's true. The way we were taught to create programs wasn't actually creating protocols at all. It was something that sucks up your time. It drains your energy and it kills your dreams. It really tried to kill mine. Now, this was my dream from the outset. To have a happily full appointment book, to be able to get home to my kids, and you're going to meet my family in just a moment, to be on time to be at their events, right? To help my clients feel successful for working with me, and to make my clients feel like they were making such fabulous progress that if they didn't keep coming back, they were missing out on the very best thing for their health. And I wanted to feel successful. Now, does any of that sound like what you want? Does it? Which of those do you want? The happily full appointment book, being able to get home for whatever is important for you, having enough time to have a life outside of your career, the balanced schedule, yes, Lydia, to help your clients feel successful, because successful clients actually do want to come back. Marissa wants all of it, yes. And of course, if you've got this all, you're probably feeling more successful yourself, right? This is my family. Now, this is a few years ago. We need to update it, but we haven't added any new little precious beings to our family yet. You can pick out maybe who I am and who my husband are. We're the oldest ones in the photo, just in case, right? We have 7 children. 7 of these lovely people are our biological babies. 5 of them are my children from another mother. I adore all of the children that my children have brought to us. And the 8 youngest ones here are our grandchildren. I'm just going to, we were down in Lydia's city last week, and these are the 2 boys. They are now 16 and 15, and they were the ones that were playing soccer. And so this is our lovely family. I have grown my health coaching business since we started having babies. So my husband and I had our first child on our 9-month anniversary. You know what we did on our wedding night, right? And so we had our first child on our 9-month anniversary, and I had started studying prior to that. But before our second child was born, I had started my business. And so I know what it's like to be busy. I know what it's like to have children, to have a home to take care of, to have a husband who also needs a piece of me, and to build my business while I'm continuing to study, to add skills to my skill set. And so as we go through today, it's really, really important for you to understand that I get it. I know busy. I know the life balance thing is kind of it's a fake thing. There's no such thing as life balance, because as soon as you think you're balanced, something happens to tip your scale a little bit, and then you try to struggle to get it back into balance. So really, we're talking about creating a life that makes you happy. That's how I would describe life balance, is the life that gives you joy. So we had all these kids while I was continuing to learn more about iridology, studied more about herbology. I never stopped studying those things, learned VitaFlex massage, learned emotional freedom technique, learned biokinesiology, actually learned 3 different styles of iridology, and it just keeps building, right? There's never an end to it. But the fact is that even with doing all of that, I wasn't getting where I needed to go. I was getting more and more overloaded. All the learning I was doing wasn't making anything easier. No one was teaching me how to use what I'd learned to make it easier. Now, most of us practice in areas of the world where the government has some say in what we can do and what we can actually say to our clients. And I get it. And the beauty of learning iridology, the way I'm going to share with you today, is that it keeps you out of trouble, because you're never going to diagnose, you're never going to prescribe. So important to stay safe. And I will tell you that as I learned how to master the use of constitutional iridology, no one taught that to me. I sorted it out all by myself. I was so proud of myself. But what it did is it changed the way I ran my business completely and entirely. And it means now that, and it's meant for many years, no unpaid overtime. I get my work done during my work hours. Then I close my office door. My office is at home, and I go out and be with my family, be with my husband, because only one of these lovely people still lives with us. And so I've got loads of grads who say the same thing, that dynamic iridology has changed their businesses dramatically for the better. And so good proof that it will probably work for you. Let's go through what it looks like 35 years ago. I was tired. I was working on all my client program development happened outside of paid hours. So for every hour I was paid for, I was spending anywhere from 2 to 4 hours creating a protocol. We had 2 children under the age of 5. I was pregnant with number 3. And yes, we know what causes it. We knew that back then too. But I was depleted. I was passionless. I was starting to resent my business. I was starting to resent my clients. My heart was totally gone out of this. And I was just so overwhelmed with trying to keep all of these apples underwater at the same time that I really did think of quitting. I really believed then, and I still believe now, that every program needs to be individualized. I don't believe in cookie cutter programs at all. So what I want to know is, do you also believe that every one of your clients deserves an individualized program? If you do, give me a 1 in the comments box to let me know if you believe that every client deserves that individual attention. Now, and Lydia's saying yes. Thank you, Lydia. I appreciate that. There may be similarities. There may be, one client has these things in their program and another client's going to have similar things, but we're going to tweak it for the individual. And Marissa is saying yes to. Excellent, excellent. Have you ever felt the kind of overwhelm I'm talking about here, where you really didn't know how you were going to make this thing work? It was just getting to be too much. Here's what would actually happen in a day. I would see a client for the very first time. The appointment was scheduled for an hour. We would spend that hour. And then after that hour was done, I was usually still with my client. That wasn't a good thing, because by that point in time, I was probably just finishing asking them questions and doing the intake. And then I needed to start creating some recommendations to send them home with. And I needed to teach them what I could to get them started. And so by now we're easily an hour and a half, an hour 45 on a 1-hour session. So I was already giving time away. And so I would send them off with that bit of information, what I thought was a bit of information. And I would go off and I would do my work, and we would have the next appointment scheduled. And usually the day before or even the morning of that appointment, they would call and cancel. So the extra time I'd spent creating the full protocol for them was now wasted. It was simply not working. I was giving away so much time and my clients were getting nowhere. I couldn't figure out why they weren't coming back. I figured I'd given them good value. I mean, I'd given them an extra 45 minutes probably for free. I didn't charge them for that. But they didn't see it that way. They saw it as I couldn't keep my appointments on time. I was not respecting their time. So after a couple of years, that thought did circle in my brain. I should just get a real job. So, I did I went and tried to get an office job. I'd done lots of office work through high school and through university as part-time jobs. And you know what I found? I was a very slow typist. And anyone who wanted to hire for full-time wanted someone who could type 60 words a minute with no errors. I was maybe 20 and I had to proofread it carefully, right? I was unhireable. I was unemployable. I couldn't go to work. So I thought of working at McDonald's, but that didn't sound very good either. So there I was, feeling kind of out of it, not feeling very happy. And that was when I decided that I had to find the answers. I actually did love what I was doing. I love working with people one-on-one. I love teaching classes. I love teaching people. I love that aspect of my job. I love seeing their lives change. I love seeing the joy in their face when they go from someplace that's not great to someplace that is better, to someplace that is better, to someplace that is better. I love that. So I had to stick with this to figure out what to do. So I took more courses, and that only led to more lengthy questionnaires. It led to more information in my head that I didn't know how to divide out, that I didn't know how to compartmentalize, that I didn't know how to choose what piece of that information did this client need, if any of it, right? But it wasn't until I actually had the opportunity to learn constitutional iridology that it started making sense. The other iridology that I'd learned before really taught me to vomit out everything I knew. Constitutional taught me how to prioritize what the client needed. But I then had to figure out a system to really distill down how much do they need? Do they need this much, this much, this much, this much, 1 point, 2 point, 3 points? What do they need? And that was, again, where constitutional really came to my rescue. As I started sorting out how to use constitutional iridology, I also made another discovery. And I'm not saying this to be proud or boastful. I knew enough without doing more research to help 99% of the people who walked through my door. That didn't mean I didn't sometimes want to know more and dive deeper and do research, because I still do that. There's still times when I think, wow, I wonder, and I start taking myself down a rabbit hole on research, which I really enjoy. But I learned that I knew enough that I could help my client right in the client session. I could give them, I probably could help them for 5 or 6 appointments without doing any research. I knew enough because I'd had enough other training. What I didn't know was how to sort it out, how to prioritize it. What should come first? What should come second? What should come third? What was the right order? Does any of that sound familiar to you? That you maybe struggle with prioritizing the information and distilling it down to what the client needs to know right now? If that is a challenge for you, I'd like to see the word distill in the comments box, that you have problems distilling it down. It's a challenge to just get that little ring box to put everything in rather than a shoe box to put everything in, right? Okay. So when I finally saw that, figured that out and understood it, it got to be so easy. And that's why I developed the iridology program, and the way I teach it the way I do is to help my students not only learn iridology, but to learn how to use it well in a clinical setting. So important. So can you imagine, and Loriana, you've got this already under wraps, you know how to do this already, but for the rest of you, can you imagine being able to get your client programs designed right in your paid client sessions? Loriana, I'm going to add to that, and do it in such a way that your clients want to keep coming back to you. How would that change your business? How would it change your life? What would you do with the extra time or the increased clientele? What would you do? How would that impact your life? While you're typing in some answers for what it would do to be able to get programs created in your client sessions and have clients want to keep coming back to you, well, you're typing that in. Let's look at what one of my grads, Karen Cho, said. Karen came to me already well-trained as a certified natural health practitioner, and she specializes in digestive health. She'd been in practice for several years, and she was frustrated that she was still sometimes having problems finding the roots of her clients' problems. She would create a program and she'd go off and spend hours embellishing it to bring back to them, but she knew her stuff. She got interested in iridology. She found me online and she started the program. She was about halfway through when she started sending me emails telling me how iridology was changing her business and how it was changing her. This is what she said. She specifically said, now I've begun to implement this amazing work in my practice very successfully. It has truly helped immensely in my decisions and assessments. I am much more confident practitioner. Okay, so I really want to see this in the chat box. How would it feel if you never had to do any unpaid homework? If you were confident in making those recommendations on the spot? If you had more free time, what would you do with that free time? I really want to know that. Would you take a nap? Would you see more clients? Would you volunteer somewhere? What would you do with more free time? Imagine having clients who can't stop telling their friends about you. So they're finding your clients for you. How would that feel? Imagine that. What would that be like? I want to know in the chat box. I really want to know what you would do with more free time, getting all your work done in your client sessions. Marissa would see more clients. Yes, right? And when you think about seeing more clients, that increases your income without you working more hours. Now, how cool is that? You know, so often when you talk to a business guru about your income and they want to make suggestions about how to increase your income, they say, well, just raise your prices. Okay, but what if that doesn't feel right to you? Well, seeing more clients is another way to do it, but we've got to balance out the time. So I'm going to give you 4 very specific steps that can give you back some of that time and help you create repeat business right now. Like you can implement these tomorrow without knowing anything about iridology. But what I will tell you is that while those 4 steps will work, when you add dynamic iridology to them, it's going to be like you're putting those steps on steroids. I don't know, is that a safe thing to say in a holistic health circle? You're going to power punch them so dramatically that it's going to be amazing. And I've proven this time and time again. And it's just amazing to see my students implement these things and then watch their businesses blossom. So anytime in the rest of this presentation, if you're thinking, this is amazing stuff, I want the training and the mentoring that goes with it, I'm going to tell you in a few minutes how you can get it all, what kind of support you're going to get, because I want to help you have the business that you've envisioned, right? Let's look at those solutions now. Here are solutions to having to spend too much time creating programs, to solutions to making it so that your clients want to come back over and over again so you don't have any just one-hit wonders. These are your solutions, and every solution starts out as a stumbling block. I was listening to a podcast this morning about investing, and they were saying, you know, the people who've done this, of course, they've built a fortune with investing, and they were talking about how when they learned the most about investing by making big mistakes, right? And so these things that are mistakes are really not mistakes for us, they're lessons. They're things that we can turn around and learn from, and that's a really important thing to remember as we do this. See if any of these stumbling blocks or problems sound familiar. So the first one is that you fire hose your clients with too much information. And you may not mean to do that, but I want you to go back to school, go back to what you were doing in school when you learned nutrition or herbology or naturopathy, whatever your background is. Because in school, if your schools were like mine, if your courses were like mine, you were taught to write case histories. You were given the description of a client who had a health problem. And then back when I did this, there was no internet. We hit the library, we did the research, we had the books, we read and we researched and we wrote and we put together this great big report, this great big file of all the information that our clients needed to be well for the rest of their lives. That was not a protocol. It was a case study. And because we spent so much time writing case studies in school, we now think we have to do that much research to write a protocol. Or we now think we don't know enough to be able to write a protocol without doing all the research. Right? And so when you do that, what happens is you give all of that information to your client, and your client gets that deer in the headlights look. They're overwhelmed. They can't possibly do this. There's too much. They don't know where to begin. And you think in your head, but I've outlined it in steps, but you've got years of training that they don't have. They look at those steps and they see this massive list that they couldn't possibly do by themselves. They need Oprah's cook living with them. They need a personal trainer to move in. They need, a housekeeper to come in and make sure that house stays organized. They get overwhelmed and discouraged. They try their hardest, might last for 36 hours, but when they realize they can't do it, they won't come back. They'll look at that list of things that you've given them, and they might possibly say, well, I could do this one, and I could do this one, and they throw the rest of it away. But the problem is they're taking those two things out of context, and doing those two things out of context is not going to create the change or the improvement they were looking for. So they ultimately fail, and they've usually failed within about 3 or 4 days. They're not coming back. They don't want to come back and say, I couldn't do it. It was too hard. I need something easier. Because they trust that you're the professional. You wouldn't give them the homework if it couldn't be done, and you've just given it to them, so it must be able to be done, but they can't do it. They must be too stupid, too weak, too whatever. And they're not going to come back and admit that. So the truth is, when you have fire hosed your clients with too much information, you've made your appointment, you've made their appointment, their health and their program all about you and your insecurities. It simply doesn't work. So chunk it down. Figure out what is the logical sequence. What is truly the first step they need to do? Give less homework. Give them one step. And you cannot say alkalize your diet, because that's really about 15 things that need to be done. You can say you now don't eat any vegetables. So the first homework is going to be to have 2 fist-sized servings of vegetables every day. Let's talk about what vegetables you could eat and how you could prepare them. What are some things that would fit into your lifestyle? And let's get you drinking 3 glasses of water a day, because you don't drink any right now. Drink 1 as soon as you get up in the morning, 1 in the middle of the afternoon, and 1 30 minutes after supper. And give them really good structure, simple things, baby steps. And you and I both know that's not the end point, right? You and I both know that it's going to take more than 2 servings of vegetables and 3 glasses of water to get them to where they need to go. But from where they started to get to that point of 2 veg and 3 waters a day is going to make some difference. You're not promising the moon. You're saying to them, the water and the veg, you're probably going to see a little bit better bowel movements. That's all we're looking for right now, is just for you, instead of having a bowel movement every 6 days, that you probably will start having one every 3 days. And when they see that and they know they're on the right track, they're going to come back and say, guess what? I'm pooping every 3 days now. What do we do next? And that's going to be where you can build. You can say, 2 servings of veg, you did great. 3 waters, you did great. Let's work to add a serving of leafy greens this big every day. And let's work to reduce your coffee by 2 cups a day. That's it. You know, when I do this with my clients, oftentimes they'll say, is that all the homework you're giving me? I might do some herbs or vitamins with them as well. And I'll say, yes. And they'll say, well, the last person I went to gave me a list this long. And my question for them is, how'd that work for you? Were you able to do it? Well, no. All right, then. That's why I'm giving you only a little bit of homework. I know you're busy. I know your life goes in a lot of directions. I want you to be able to focus. And if I just give you a few things to focus on, I know you can be successful with this. Oh, I get it. Okay. And that's when they know that they're going to be coming back because they're going to have success, right? Okay, so chunk it down. Stumbling block 2, you start at the wrong place in their program. So you've got all of this information, but you've got to figure out what is the starting point. Now, see if this sounds familiar. You can't help them correct a leaky gut if their stomach isn't producing enough acid, right? You can't help them lose weight through diet and exercise if the intestinal flora is out of balance. You can't help them if you start at the wrong place. So to do a calorie restricted diet is going to lead to yo-yo dieting if you don't fix the gut flora, right? So you need to fix the gut flora first, which is going to involve some dietary shifting, not necessarily anything that's restricting calories in any way, but some dietary shifting with the right kinds of supplements to begin establishing the correct flora. If we don't feel confident in our ability to find the right starting point, we usually overcompensate and we give too much homework, going in too many different directions. Tell me in the comments box, have you ever overcompensated, given more homework than you should have because you weren't exactly sure where to start? Or maybe, and this is just as likely, maybe you were giving your clients what you thought they wanted. You know, like medical doctors often give prescriptions because patients have said they feel like they didn't get their money's worth if they don't walk out of the office with a prescription. So doctors will say, they didn't need that drug. I gave them something pretty innocuous because, you know, otherwise they're never coming back. So if we give our clients what we think they're expecting, it may not be what they really need, and that's not going to help them either. So, simple strategy, keep notes. Do you keep client files? Do you keep client notes? If you do, give me a 2 in the comments box. Do you keep files on your clients so you know where you've been with them and what you've done with them? Yes, Lydia? Yes, excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to suggest that you do is in the margin, in pencil, and Marissa says yes too. Excellent, thank you. In the margin of their notes, and this is for your eyes only, in pencil, sketch out a list of where you think you're starting with them and where you want to go and what the steps are. Right? I will list out what their concerns are, but what what I understand the cause of their symptoms is, because you know that the symptom is not the problem, right? And then from there, I'll write down what I understand from Iridology and from all the other training I've got, the order that I need to address things in. So I've got a roadmap that is going to help me stay on track. So the next appointment when they come in, you know, we've worked on the first 2 points, they've done their homework, things are progressing. Now I can go down that map to number 3. And it's in pencil, because sometimes you come to a fork in the road where you could go left or right and get to the same end point, but there's a reason you need to go left, because you need to go, you know, there's something else that needs to be done, or you need to go right because it's a different way of approaching things. And so with having that roadmap, I'm then able to say, oh, okay, we got to here. And this is where we need to end up, but I need to put a left turn in here instead. And it keeps me on track and it keeps me organized. I call this a therapeutic sequence. And again, it's only for my eyes. I'm the only one who ever sees this. It keeps me on track. Now, this actually is going to serve as another purpose for you. You're with your client, you've done the session, you've created their first steps protocol or their next steps protocol, depending on where you are in your sequence with them. And you've booked their follow-up appointment. And as you're getting ready to say goodbye, you're going to say, now you know what your homework is. When you do this homework, I expect we are going to see these kinds of things for results. Okay. And when we see those results in the next appointment that we've scheduled for, 4 weeks away or whatever it is, we will then be working on XYZ. But we can only work on XYZ if we're getting these results. Getting these results is going to tell me if we're on track or not. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to say those things to our client? We'd want to say those things because, number one, it tells them that you have confidence, you have a game plan, you know what you're doing, you know where you're going. Number two, it tells them they need to be on track with their homework. Herbs don't work if you don't take them. Dietary changes don't work if you don't implement them, right? So it tells them that if they do their homework, this is the result they should get, that you expect them to get. And so it's on their shoulders. And then number three, it gives them a reason to come back, right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I often tell my clients I can only do my best work when they do their best work, right? And I really underscore that for them, that if they think that coming and sitting in my office is going to be the magic they need, they are totally wrong. They've got to do their homework, right? Excellent. Okay, stumbling block number three. Some nutrition coaches use scanners and biometric doodads, things where or an online questionnaire that tallies things up and gives you all kinds of answers. I have used those as well. And I also ditched them. I found that they were not reliable. I trust my intuition more than I trust the gadgets. And I also found that when I used them, my clients started saying as they came in, are we going to do a scan today? And I quickly realized I could be replaced by a scanner if I wasn't careful. If my clients went online, they would find they could buy the same equipment, run their own scans, cut me completely out of the picture. Wouldn't be good for business, right? So I turfed all those and focus entirely on building that rapport with my clients. So important. Now, I want to ask, do any of you use questionnaires for your intake with your clients? If you do, put a question mark in the comments box. You have a questionnaire, not the informed consent form. You have to have that says who you are and what you do and gathers their name, address, and phone number. But do you also give your clients a questionnaire to fill out? Like, what do you eat? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? Do you sleep well? How many bowel movements do you have? What's your stress like? Do you use a questionnaire? Yes? No? Lydia, no. Congratulations. Yeah, that's amazing. I was taught to use questionnaires. And it was like every course I took gave me another questionnaire, and I kept melding them together, merging them in the common vernacular, and found that the questionnaire was getting crazy long. Long questionnaires are absolutely no better than using a biometric doodad. It gives you way too much information in way too many directions, totally irrelevant. When you know how to ask relevant questions, and that's what the eyes will teach you, you actually get better information from your clients than you would from a questionnaire. So what do we need to do instead? We need to learn how to ask the right questions. And again, that's where iridology comes in. And in the iridology course, we actually spend a lot of time looking at cases, looking at eyes, and saying, what questions, knowing this about the client, knowing what you see in the eyes, what questions do you want to ask this client? And why? Make sure those questions are laser specific. They are directed to your client. They're not the kind that you could ask any person on the street. These are about your client. And we want to do that because it creates rapport, right? So stumbling block number 4, you are not unique. You blend in with the nutrition coaching or the herbal crowd or the naturopathic crowd. Okay, that hurts a little, right? That you're not unique. Everyone wants to be unique. We need to be unique. We need to stand out. We need to be different. But here's the fact that if you have added no other skills to your skill set since you graduated from school, then you are just like everybody else who graduated from school when you did. So did your training teach you how to get noticed? Did your training teach you anything about marketing? If it did, or if it did not, just put a 3 in the comments box. That'll let me know that you weren't taught anything about marketing. And having a website and a business card, that has nothing to do with marketing, actually. So did they actually teach you how to market? And Marissa says no. Yeah. I think it should be a part of the core curriculum for every career trade out there. They should teach marketing, because as a nutrition coach or herbalist, being unique, again, doesn't mean having a recipe book. It doesn't mean having menu plans. It doesn't mean having a 3-day sugar challenge. It doesn't mean having a website. It doesn't even mean having a Facebook page. Everybody's got those. But here's the fact, is that you don't want to spend a lot of time on those kinds of things if you don't know how to actually stand out in the crowd. Adding iridology to your tool set and knowing how to market that with your other skills can really help you stand out in the crowd. So that is an amazing fact that I had to learn the very hard way. So you've got some choices. You may have more choices than this, but I've distilled it down to 2 simple choices. Keep doing what you're doing, hoping things will magically change while you continue working unpaid overtime, if indeed you are. While you continue missing time with loved ones so you can keep overwhelming your clients so they won't come back, while you get discouraged and keep thinking, I should just get a real job. Or make some radical changes in what you do and how you think so you can ditch the overtime. Have a life that you actually love that includes time with your loved ones, because you give your clients exactly what they need to succeed, not too much and not too little. So they want to come back again and again, while you think, I love the career I've created for myself. So totally possible. So totally possible. And this is where constitutional iridology comes in. I teach constitutional under my own name of dynamic iridology, and it's the dynamic iridology assessment system. And it's way more than just an iridology course. If you just want to learn what the markers are, buy a book. If you actually want to know, learn, and be taught and guided and supported in learning how to implement it in your practice, in how to integrate markings, how this marking and this marking and this marking work together to flesh out the story that you need to know about your client, then that is what the dynamic iridology system is all about. And it's what has made such a huge change in my life. I no longer donate time. Haven't done it for years. My clients always come back for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th appointments, and then they fade off, and I expect them to, because they've achieved their first health goals. Now they're going to go and just practice this for a little while, like a few years. But I see it time and time again that as they age and as things start to slip or they forget, they stop doing what we talked about, they come back because they want a refresher, they want an update. When we teach dynamic iridology, we include sclerology because the iris is genetic. It's not going to change by doing a cleanse, but the sclera is very dynamic. The sclera is where we can see changes. We can see problems that are coming up, and we can see problems that we are resolving. So we really want to learn the sclerology as well. My absolute first passion, aside from my family, is helping my clients. And I do that with dynamic iridology. And my second passion, which is neck and neck with that first one, is teaching iridology. 2 practitioners. That's one of the reasons why I'm pretty picky about, if you've heard about this webinar tonight through the Dynamic Iridology Assessment Facebook group, for instance, you know that in order to get into that group, you've got to have some credentials under your belt, at least an anatomy and physiology course, if not a modality as well, because I like teaching practitioners. That's what makes me very, very happy. So just in case you're kind of new to iridology, let's do a little assessment here. All right. This is a female client who came to me, and I have only seen her once because she was home from university. She was going to university like 2,000 miles away. She came home from university and I saw her over her Christmas break, and then she went back to university and then, of course, implemented what we were doing. We had some emails after that. And then, and she's since left the city. When she came home, she moved away from here. So I haven't seen her since, but 20 years old. And her concern was that she had been gaining weight. You know, as a freshman, we talk about the freshman 15. Well, she had gained 20 pounds in her first semester away at school. This was not good. She'd been to the doctor over the holidays when she was home. The doctor said, no, you're fine. There's not a problem here. So as we started working together in our hour that we had, and she's saying she wanted to lose weight, she didn't like the way this weight was going on, I took her eye photos. And what I noticed, can you see that this little rope that's in the eye, this is what we call a gateway arch, the way it's sitting here. She has another arch here and another arch here. Now, these arches suggest a genetic predisposition towards blood sugar imbalances. So when I saw that, I asked her a question that she thought was totally unrelated to weight gain. I asked her about her menstrual cycles. I said, are they regular? She said, yes. I said, do they happen every 4 weeks? And she said, well, they're usually 4 weeks late. I said, are you saying they happen every 8 weeks? And she said, yes. And that was the tip off, right? That was the tip off. The doctor didn't care about that at all. It didn't go that way. And so I asked her, what's your diet like at school? What is your activity level like at school? Well, she lived on campus. She was eating on the meal plan, which is a lot of carbs. She didn't have to get much exercise because everything was just right there. So I asked her about her apartment. Did she have a kitchen? Yes, she did. Did she know how to cook? Yes, she did. How far away was the nearest grocery store? About 2 miles. I said, great. Are you willing to walk to the grocery store to get groceries, to bring them back and cook your own supper? She said, I could do that. I said, great. And then I said, has anyone ever mentioned the term polycystic ovarian syndrome? And she said, no. And because I know this girl's family, I know that she does want to get married and she does want to settle down and have a family. And so I said, well, when your cycles are 8 weeks apart, you'll find this on every PCOS website. The cycles that are more than 6 weeks apart really raise the suspicion that you might have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And PCOS goes hand in hand 99.9% of the time with insulin resistance. And the insulin resistance is likely why you're gaining weight, and it's likely why your hormones are out of whack and your cycles are so far apart. And she's going, oh, really? No one had ever looked at this with her. And it was this one little indicator 3 times over in her eyes that sent me down that pathway. And so I would never have asked about her menstrual cycles for weight gain if I hadn't seen her eyes. So we talked about diet, gave her the ideas, you need meat, you need protein, you need vegetables, you need the low carb veggies. We talked through what that would look like. You need to be walking every day for 30 minutes at a time, minimum. That could be the trip to the grocery store, but you also need, on non-grocery store days, you need to be walking more. She had no budget for supplements because she was going back to school, but she could afford a few groceries because she would cancel out of the meal plan. She sent me an email a couple of months later and she said the weight was coming off. She was already down 10 pounds and her periods were now down to 6 weeks, which is still a little on the long side, but she was making progress. I wouldn't have known to do all that with her if I hadn't seen the gateway arch in her eyes, right? Isn't that amazing, right? Amazing. Here is one of my third generation clients. Now, her mom is really in tune with things, as is her grandma. So her mom brought her in and said, there are not really any problems. I just think I need to bring my daughters in and work preemptively. I need to understand how they're put together, and I need to do preventive work. And I said, that's brilliant. I love it. I love it. So 4-year-old, third generation, she's got these lymphatic eyes. The blue eyes are lymphatic. She's from an amazing home. Her mom and dad love each other. It's an intact home, which is fabulous. Very nutrition conscious. Everything's organic or, wildcrafted. It's beautiful. The mom knows how to use herbs, so she'll often give her children herbs and vitamins as they need them. So that's fabulous. But her mom wanted me to look at the eyes. And so what we see here is with the way the collarette, that's what this ring is called, is placed. This little girl is a bit of an introvert. Now that will also predispose her to constipation. So I said to the mom, you just need to watch her bowels, make sure she doesn't get constipated. And there's a tiny hint of yellow right in here where it's not a pure white up here anymore. It's a little bit yellow, which says we want to watch the kidneys a little bit. Nothing wrong with the kidneys. No indication that there's anything wrong with the kidneys. And kidneys are about clearing acid, and you already know that. And if the acid builds up, we can see inflammation, we can see mucus, we can see allergies, we can see asthma, eczema, things like that. So we want to watch the kidneys, not from that paranoid perspective, but just give them some ongoing love and support. And so I just said, does she drink water? Yeah. How much does she drink? And the mom said, well, probably not enough. So this little girl weighs about 40 pounds. And so I said, well, she should be drinking about 20 ounces of water a day. So I'm going to suggest you get her a water bottle that has the ounce markings and fill that up and make sure that she gets through that in a day. If you need to add some fruit to it to flavor it, if you need to add some liquid chlorophyll, if you need to do something to make it appealing or interesting, do what you need to, as long as it's a healthy option. All the white in her eyes also suggests she is predisposed to a little bit of elevated mucus or elevated acid. And we also see that there's a predisposition to some stagnation in the lymphatic system. So the diet is already good. It's already a low acid diet. I'm not going to be too concerned about the acid levels at this stage of her life. I did encourage the mom to make sure that this little girl gets a lot of physical activity, gets to the park every day to run and jump and, do all kinds of cool things, put her into dance classes or tumbling classes or whatever, to make sure she's getting good physical activity, because that will support the lymphatic system. And I suggested that this little girl needs some dry skin brushing because her skin zone is showing us that her body doesn't want to throw off toxins as well as we would like it to. So I didn't give this mom any supplements because I know the family well, and I know the diet well. I know the environment in their home well. And so it was really just watch for these things, do a bit of gentle dry skin brushing with her. If you see any of these kinds of problems, you can lean on these types of supplements. But otherwise, let's just get her drinking a little bit more. Let's get her being really physically active. And let's help her to express herself as an introvert. There's lots of things introverts can do, artistic things that are very non-threatening. Putting her in a big group with lots of kids, probably not in her comfort zone. And she doesn't need the stress of that, right? So I love doing eyes with kids because we can do so much that's preventive. These are the eyes. Some people might want to call these brown eyes, but the fact that we actually see some of the fiber structure of this says it's not really a brown eye. It is actually what we call a biliary eye. This is one of my clients who's been with me for 39 years. We figured that out one day when she was in recently, and we were thinking now, because we had our babies, our first 3 babies at the same time. It's like, now, which baby were you bringing in to see me? And we figured that out. Okay, it's been 39 years. Pretty amazing. She's well trained. She knows a lot about nutrition. She knows a lot about herbs, well trained. But she came into me, she's in her mid 60s, and her problem was she'd been to the doctor. Her cholesterol was up, her triglycerides were up, her hemoglobin A1C was up, and her blood pressure was up. And the doctor was starting to talk medication, which she didn't want to do. So we chatted. What is your lifestyle like? High stress, a very dysfunctional family when it comes to her kids, very dysfunctional. And she had just spent the last 10 years nursing her mother and her uncle until they passed away, right? High stress. She also, diet wasn't quite what it should be. Her husband is very, very ill and his appetite is limited. So she's cooking the foods that he will eat. And that's not necessarily foods that are healthy. So that had not been helping at all. We know with this eye type that she is predisposed to liver concerns, liver questions. So that includes cholesterol, triglycerides, that kind of thing. And it's going to play into the elevated hemoglobin A1C, correct? Her pupils are not round. That's going to tell us some very dynamic things as well. We're not going to get into that right here, right now. But again, what we know is that on a basic level, the way her pupils are shaped tells us that her liver is likely struggling a little bit as well. So when we look at how the liver metabolizes carbs to make cholesterol and triglycerides, that gives us this white ring here. So we know her liver is really not happy. This ring is not going to go away no matter what we do. And because of that, we see these inherent predispositions, right? We're seeing this, we're seeing pigments, we're seeing the way the different colors are sitting in the eye. All of these different things we see are teaching us about her genetic predispositions. When we look in the sclera, we can see heavy vessels that teach us about different problems that are current. This is very dynamic right now. We see this blood vessel that comes out here, very dynamic right now, talking about congestion in her body, circulatory and organ congestion. And when we look at this and we realize that this is through her upper thoracic, it's going to play into things in just a moment. She's overweight by about 40 pounds. And so what we did is she knew everything to do. She just needed someone to be her friend and to walk it with her and to teach her what to do. And so we started recrafting her diet and saying, okay, this is what you need. How can you do this? How can you hold these changes and still satisfy your husband? His taste for sweets and carbs and things. What can you do? How can we make this work so you're not having to cook two entirely separate meals? So we really talked about that. We got her to cut out the refined carbs. We got her walking 30 minutes a day. And over 3 months, she lost 20 pounds. All of her labs came back normal after 3 months. We were so excited. She did really well. Then some family stuff hit. She fell off the program, like really fell hard, and was totally off everything we had suggested, supplements, diet, everything, for probably a year. In December 2020, I got an email from her saying she'd had a major heart attack. Thank goodness her husband was well enough, and with his industrial training, he recognized what was happening. They live about 3 miles from a major medical center. He loaded into the car rather than calling the ambulance, because it would have taken the ambulance 10 minutes, right? And he got her there, and of course they got her in, and she's doing beautifully. She's doing really, really well. But because she had fallen off everything, all of her numbers reverted. Now we're starting over. And from December 2020 to now, she's been under very intense medical care with many medications. And we've been working on the diet. And now we're just starting to introduce the supplements to make sure that she's getting back on track. Now, isn't that grand that we knew she was headed for trouble with these different markings we see, and we started working on them. And the chance is very likely that if she hadn't succumb to the stress, and I'm not saying that in a way that is harsh or judgmental. She's a wonderful human being, and my goodness, she faces a lot of stress on a daily basis. If she had not succumbed to the stress, she might not have had the heart attack, right? So now we just love her and help her pick up the pieces and put her back together. So are you ready to make some radical changes in what you know and how you implement this? I'm hoping you are. Imagine having the confidence, being able to make those recommendations and being able to see in the eyes and to understand from the eyes what questions to ask to connect your client's symptoms to what's actually going on in their body to create a program that is so on target for them. And in that program to create the steps. We start here, then we go here, then we go here, then we go here, so that you never overwhelm your clients. How would that feel? Let me introduce you to the dynamic iridology assessment system. Now, I'm going to tell you up front that there are a lot of iridology teachers out there. Some of them are pretty inexpensive. Some of them are pretty expensive, depending on what you're thinking of as inexpensive and expensive. Most of them either want you just to learn it from discs or from pre-recorded videos. If they want to teach it live or on a webinar, they want to do it really intensely. Like, let's do this in 5 days, cram it all into 5 long days, get it done. We're going to talk about that in a moment too, but this is the way the dynamic iridology assessment system is the only 20-week, you read that right, 20-week, fully mentored constitutional iridology training program that is designed for holistic practitioners like you to help you incorporate what you already know about nutrition or herbology or naturopathy or homeopathy, whatever you already know, while mastering iridology, integrating all of that while building your confidence as a practitioner. So much of what we learn when we take courses boils down to standalone techniques that are hard to integrate. That is not how I teach iridology. This is not a standalone. I teach you exactly how to use it, because what good does it do to know one more thing if you don't know how to implement it? So what is the system? It is a step-by-step course that teaches constitutional iridology in a logical and sequential manner. It does not teach it in the simple one sign means one thing, one marker means one thing. That's been proven to be inaccurate. It's out of date. That's where I started 4 decades ago, and it doesn't work. Instead, we teach the interaction of the markers, teach how to ask questions, and how to implement what you already know. So we take your knowledge, bring that into the course, and have you draw on what you already know as you're learning this. What I love about teaching the way I do is that I learn from my students. I teach you iridology. Your backgrounds in nutrition or herbology or homeopathy or whatever you've got are different from mine. And I always learn something from my clients, or from my students rather. It is amazing. I learn from my clients too, by the way. So in this program, let's run through the 20 lessons quickly. What do you learn so that you know what you're getting? Lesson 1, we cover the history of iridology, where it comes from, how it's developing as a science. There's been so much forward motion in iridology that what we knew 40 years ago is almost irrelevant. Most of it is inaccurate and has been proven that way. Along with the anatomy of the eye and the history, we also begin talking about how what we see in the eyes shows inherent or the inherited potentials, and which things we see in the eyes are things the person has done to themselves that they've acquired. Lessons 2 through 4, we cover the constitutions and the subtypes. So you're going to learn 3 basic constitutions. You've seen a sampling of those when we did the analyses tonight. And 10 different subtypes. This is important because when you understand your types and your subtypes, you've got a foundation to start asking questions. As a matter of fact, by the time you finished lesson 2, where we've covered the 3 basic types, you can start looking in eyes and start asking questions. You won't know everything yet, obviously, but you will begin to be able to ask questions that are relevant to your client right then and there. We also start discussing program creation ideas. What would you ask? What would be one thing you would want to recommend to this client? And we get you starting to think about what you know and how you pull it in. So important. We talk about pigments, all the extra colors we see, whether it's a freckle, whether it's an overall wash like this, or whether it's the golden highlights. We talk about what the pigments mean about different organs in the body and how it influences other organs. And we really work with that interplay of This organ can create stress for that organ through this pathway. That's why it's so important to have your anatomy under your belt, right? We talk about fiber variations. Can you see the threads in here? If you can see the threads, give me threads in the comments box. Can you see threads in here as well? Threads, thank you, Lydia. These are all, if anyone else can see those as well, I want to see that from you too. When we understand the threads, how they're sitting, when we understand these openings that we call lacunae and where they're sitting, it again teaches us about what this person has inherited and what the potential health concerns might be. We can match that up with our clients' symptoms, what they think is the problem, helps us to understand why they've got the problem. That helps us to create the next steps. It just keeps going like this. How powerful to ask the right questions. Lesson 9 is nervous system. We see the nervous system information in the shape of the pupil, in the placement of the collarette, in the placement of some of these lines that very faintly run outwards. We call them radial furrows. Sometimes you'll see them really dark. This tells us about your client's nervous system, about how they use their nerve nutrients. Parts of that tell us about their spinal alignment. And you know that the spinal alignment, that's going to teach us about nerve feeds coming off the spinal cord. So lots of things when we look at this. We spend 3 lessons, 10, 11, 12, 13, 4 lessons on the nutritive zone, which is everything from the pupil's edge to this ring. Why would we do that? Because this area teaches us about how they digest their food, how their intestinal tract works, how they assimilate their nutrients. Some of the most important things we need to understand, right? Because if their digestive tract isn't working right in some way, shape, or form, you can change the diet, you can give them supplements till you're blue in the face and it's not going to do one speck of good. So we need to really understand the nutritive zone. And again, we continue to learn about how all the markings work together. We continue practicing. What questions would you ask? Why would you ask that? What would you suggest for a dietary thing? What would you suggest for a lifestyle thing? What would you suggest for a supplement? Whatever your background is, I want to draw that information out of you. Then we talk about the rest of the eye, the humeral and ciliary zone, which is everything from this ring to about here. And this is how the organs how the nutrients are transported in the body, how the different organs use the nutrients. So much information. So if you could see, like we see right here, this person has inherited the possibility of having some kidney issues. We don't know what that is unless they actually have a problem. But we've got the yellow in here, which also suggests a predisposition to kidney. And when we have this blue eye, and we have little bits where it looks thickened like this suggests the predisposition towards building up acid, which of course comes from improper digestion of proteins and the kidneys not being able to filter the proteins out very well, right? To remove the acids, filter the acids out. Right? And so when we see this and we see all these marks that play together, we then know how to connect what's going on in their body to their symptoms, to know what questions to ask and how to build a protocol for them. Contraction furrows. Okay, can you see these rings coming around in here? If you can see rings, I'd like you to type rings in the comment box. Rings. Because these rings teach us more about the nervous system. They teach us more. Thank you so much, Lydia. These teach us more about how this person uses their calcium, magnesium, B vitamins, and vitamin C. It teaches us whether they function in the sympathetic or parasympathetic mode more. That then teaches us, about the adrenal glands and about so many things. So we spend an entire lesson looking at different ways these can show up and what that means. Lesson 16, we talk about syndromes and zone 7. Zone 7 is the very outer edge of the iris. When we understand syndromes, and we don't see syndromes in every eye, it gives us a really quick synopsis of key points that will likely need nurturing. There are only 4 syndromes that we study in the dynamic iridology assessment system class, DIAS class. But they are very, very powerful when you see them. We talk about how eyes change. So if you've heard or seen things on the internet about do this cleanse, do this fast, buy this package, and it's going to change your eyes to be completely blue, that's garbage. I'm just being honest. It's total garbage. Eyes do change, but not like that. We also, and so we're going to talk about how they change, why they change, what changes, what is the influence that makes them change. We also talk about the whites of the eye, where the iris is genetic, the whites or the sclera is dynamic. This changes over time, and we can influence what we see here when we address things properly. That's where we can monitor change, not rapidly, but we can monitor change. So how is this done? Well, the course is delivered via 22-hour-long live webinars once per week. So you get 40 hours of course instructional time that is interactive. We do it as a webinar. I encourage my students to have their cameras and their microphones turned on so we can talk back and forth, and so that we can actually work out questions that you might have. And I want you to think about what you would pay for 40 hours of live instruction. When you go online, and you probably will, you will find that there are IPA certified instructors. That's the International Iridology Practitioners Association certified instructors like me, who are teaching face-to-face courses or online courses for anywhere from $1,200 US to $2,200 US. They're taught by IPA certified instructors, which means they've had to jump through some hoops, some pretty serious hoops. When you think about those courses, if it's a course that you have to go to, that tuition is not including your airfare, your accommodation, your meals while you're there. It's not including your anything except your actual tuition, right? When you're looking at doing a course that you have to travel to, I've done the math, and you're probably looking at, from where I live to fly into the States, because that's just really expensive. It's really expensive. Looking at about $4,000 US plus tuition to get the job done, plus a week off work. That's intense. That's intense. But I have found over the years, and this is my personal preference as well for learning, that I do not learn in those intensive courses. When I go to a symposium or a conference where it's like 2 or 3 or 4 days of just constant, I stop listening. In fact, I start skipping sessions, and they're going to send me the recordings. I'll pick it up that way. I find that my students learn really well. 2 hours once a week, it gives them time to go and practice, to study, to come up with questions, bring the questions back to the next class. We can address those questions. I want my students practicing in between sessions. So the tuition that I've set this, that I feel the curriculum is worth, is $23.95 Canadian. We'll talk about what that means for those of you who might be in the US in just a moment, how dollars translate. But let's talk first about how things look. This is Sharon Bimrose. She's a naturopath. She came into my course already having studied iridology as a part of her ND degree. And she said the structure, content, delivery, documentation, and support of my class surpassed everything she'd had before. And that iridology certainly reduces the time required for prioritizing a treatment plan. I love that. She already had training. You don't have to have any training to come into the class, as long as you've got that anatomy and physiology behind you. But she found that learning it 2 hours at a time, with time to study it, time to ask questions, really worked. Karen, we met Karen earlier. She had just been to a regenerative detox course where iridology is implemented. And she said, I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with iridology education. They had no support, unanswered questions, and a lot of confusion. Now, she has graduated nearly 4 years ago, and she still comes back for mentoring. And we're going to talk about that mentoring. I believe in supporting my students even after they've graduated. So important. I asked asked on my private students and alumni Facebook group, how has iridology helped you in your business? Karen says it has helped her to understand the relationships between different organs and organ systems more in depth. I love that. It's also helped her to be able to have a better handle on what modalities, what therapies will work better for her clients, so she can be more precise and efficient in her recommendations. Fabulous. This is what a class looks like. I share my screen. You share your cameras and your microphones so that we can have a conversation back and forth. When you've got a question, you ask it and we work with that. With every course, when you're registered, you will also have access to a student site that will have a recording of every one of your class videos as they happen. If you have to miss a class, not a problem. Go and catch it on the recording. Every class session is also divided into topics, and every topic has its own separate recording. So if you just need to review one little section, you don't have to listen to 2 hours. You can just pick that one recording and get there. This is like getting the course 3 times over. Every teacher requires you to have an iridology map and a textbook. Most of them use the popular textbooks that cost between $250 and $300 US. And I include those as a bonus as digital downloads. The textbook that I've written and had approved by IPA, and the iris map that we use, $275 value as well. Cheat sheets. I don't know if you ever used Coles Notes or Cliff Notes when you were in school. I didn't, but I know students who did. We've created the ultimate Cliff's Notes or Coles Notes for the course as well. Taken 200 pages of textbook, distilled it down to 45 pages of charts, so that when you know what the markings are, you can look them up quickly and see quickly what kinds of things could you expect for symptoms, what are some questions you'd ask, what are some recommendations you could make. No other teacher has this. Other teachers have asked if they could buy a copy. I'm kind of maybe stingy, I guess, because I won't sell this separately. You have to be a student to get it. Now, here is what's really valuable to you, and that is that we have a private Facebook group that is open only to my students and my alumni. You get invited to join it once you are enrolled in the program, and you will never be kicked out of this group as long as you promise to be nice, right? And this is where you can come anytime during your course, after your course is done, to post questions, to post cases that you would like some help with or that you just want to share because they're interesting. And we also do twice a month what we call the office hours. These are hot seats. So it's a webinar like this. It's listed in the student Facebook group, and we also send out a reminder email for it. And if you've got something you need to have some input on, a question, a case, if I've got something exciting and interesting that I want to share, we just drop a comment in the Facebook group where we're promoting the office hour that's coming up. Just, I want to have a hot seat. And that means you're on the agenda, and you get to have some time to discuss whatever you want, to get feedback, to get support. Those are worth $10,000 a piece because you will never get kicked out. You know, I've done lots of programs, taken courses where they had Facebook support, where they had office hours. I've paid like thousands of dollars to take the course. And as soon as the course was done, slam the door, right? You don't get to be involved in these anymore. I don't believe in doing that. My students have access to this ongoing. The office hours get recorded and stored on a student site for up to 18 months where you can go back and review them. Maybe you had us discuss one of your cases and we talked about it, and everybody was giving so many great ideas all over the place and you didn't have time to write everything down. You can hit the recording and go and get it all. Here's what another student shared. Mike is a naturopath in Arizona. I asked him, why did you enroll in my program? He said, the interactive online platform with an experienced teacher and practitioner. You said the fundamentals of iridology could be learned in this format, and that's what was delivered, plus a lot more on how to integrate it directly into current practice. I'm very happy with the training. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so if you want to certify, you want to become IPA certified. Some of my students do, some of my students don't. Whatever you want to do, I will support you in your decision. I'm not here to push you one way or the other. IPA requires 3 levels of exams. The first one is 10 case studies that I provide to you. You write them up, you send them to me. I go through them with a fine-tooth comb. Then you and I meet privately for at least an hour to go over this. What were your strengths? What were your weaknesses? Where do I think you need some spit and polish? Where do you shine? When you and I agree that you've got this down pat, then we go to exam 2. If I'm feeling like you're not quite there, I'll have you do a couple more cases to write up, send to me. I'll mark them. We'll have another conversation. Make sure you're rock solid. When you're rock solid, we come to exam 2, which is IPA gives me a case study. I give it to you. You do it. You send it back. I mark it. We meet again. We talk about it. Are you ready? Yes. Are you not ready? No. Yeah. And we work from there. When we have finished IPA exam 2, if you want to certify, you will need to purchase an IPA student membership. Once you have that membership, I let IPA know you have finished all the prerequisites, and then you can apply to IPA and pay the exam fee to do the exam. When you pass the exam, you will need to provide IPA with proof that you have completed an anatomy and physiology course with a grade of 80% on that course. So it can't be just a course that was a part of like you covered some anatomy during a herbal program or during a nutrition program. It has to be you covered nutrition and the anatomy course was separate. When you've got that and submit that, you've passed the course, you've done all the prerequisites, then they will issue your certificate. This is another reason why I like my students to have an anatomy course under their belt before they start the Iridology program, because it just speeds them along. Total value of the bonuses, which is everything except the top line, $28,900. Do you have that sitting in your back pocket? Actually, the total cost is $31,300, but here's the deal. It's worth that much. And I know that you will think so too. But I know that most of us don't have that much just waiting to be spent on a course, waiting to be invested in an amazing course. So instead of $31,302, and I know I could sell it for that. I truly do know that. I'd only need to sell 3 courses a year to 3 people, teach them privately. Absolutely. I'd rather teach groups though, when I can. So the tuition is $23.95 Canadian. Now I know Lydia is in Canada. Loriana, in case you're in the US or somewhere else, let's talk about the conversion rate. Lydia is grateful that we're in Canadian dollars and not US dollars. But if you are in the US, when you pay for your course, it's going to show up as approximately, give or take a little bit, $1,800 US. Okay, I don't control the exchange rate. I don't control the service fees that PayPal or your credit card charge. So I don't know exactly what it will cost, but the current exchange rate puts it at about 1,800 US. If you're in Australia, it'll be about 25.50 US. If you're in the UK, it'll be about 1,400 British pounds sterling. Okay. And so that makes it way more affordable than $31,302. Would you agree? Yeah, you're probably breathing a sigh of relief. But here's the thing. Some people want a payment plan, and we've got that as well. $549, 5 payments of $549 Canadian. So let's look at those, how that translates. Here's your 1,800 to 1,900 US, 1,400 British pounds sterling, 2,500-ish, 2,550 Australian. When we look at the payment plan, this is how it breaks down. So much more doable for most of us, right? If you're interested in doing the program, those are your tuitions. Now, if you really just want the information, you just want to do it by yourself, you don't care if you have a live instructor, you just want to learn it off recordings, and you don't want to certify with IPA, this is really important, you don't want to certify, I do have a home study version of the program that is a much lower tuition, But again, there's no Facebook group. There's no support. You're on your own. I don't answer questions. I don't mentor you. You're on your own. The next course starts on September 9th. And these are the times based on where we're at. It will be 12 noon Mountain Daylight Time for 2 hours. We will meet every Thursday, except around Christmas. We'll take a week or two off. And we need to remember that our time zones change here in Alberta in November. So how that affects the rest of these, I haven't even looked at that yet, but things could shift by an hour for you. And so you need to be aware of that. This is the link to register for the course, iridology.education/course-info. And I'm just going to paste that in there. And so that's in the comment box for you. Here's what another one of my students said. Now, seriously, when Michelle first applied to the class, I got nervous because she already had iridology certifications from David Pesic. She had his levels 1, 2, and 3. She had iridology in professional practice with Darko Purse. But she says, this is the most amazing iridology course I've ever taken. Most importantly, I taught her how to put it all together and make a proper assessment. Everybody else had taught her what iridology is, but not how to use it. This is Stephanie. Stephanie is a doll. I love all of my students. They are, which means that if you get to be one of my students, I love you too, right? I mean, that's just how it goes. I have fabulous students. I attract the nicest people. Stephanie has a master's in education. She knows education. I asked her, why did you take it? And she said, she started out with, she had tried to teach herself with books and videos, but everything was conflicting. And she told her husband, this is beyond me. I'm not getting it at all. So when I asked her, why did you choose me? She had found me on YouTube and she watched some of my preliminary videos on YouTube. And she said, I'd seen enough of instructors online to know that you are the best teacher, the way you organize info, check for understanding, coach your students. Other instructors know their stuff, but you have the heart of a teacher. And I wanted to graduate with understanding, not just knowledge. This is why I teach the way I do. This is why I mentor my students with office hours and Facebook groups. There again, your dates, the timing of it, depending on what time zone you're in. So for those of you who are in the US, Vancouver is Pacific Daylight, Winnipeg is Central Daylight, Toronto is Eastern Daylight, Halifax is Atlantic Daylight, and then we've got London and Sydney. All righty. One more student. This is an interesting student. Leah is from Slovenia. The time that our course was happening would have been like 3 a.m. for her the last time we taught it, or when she wanted to take it, which she started in July. And she opted not to do the home study, do it on your own program. She enrolled in the full program. She was unable, of course, to come to the classes because that was a crazy time, but she listened to every class recording and every recording I posted in the student site. One of the office hours times worked really well for her, so she came to those and she posted questions in the Facebook group. She said, I'm really grateful to you for everything that you've given us. For me, it feels like this knowledge is very precious. My heart is on my sleeve. It feels like the pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together. It was a new naturopathic student and was having some challenges with the way they were teaching iridology and how to work with that with what she was learning about naturopathy. I really appreciate it and I'm very grateful to you because of this. Thank you. And there she is with her certificate of completion for the course. So I'm no different than you. I started my business from scratch. I did it the way I was taught. I made mistakes along the way. I've developed and tested this plan, this way I teach over 3 decades for assessing client needs, creating their programs so that my clients can be successful and so that my students can be successful. I want you to remember why you're here today. Now, whether these are your reasons or not, maybe you don't feel as comfortable and confident as you want to, and you want to get rid of that imposter syndrome. Maybe you're tired of spending hours unpaid and overtime creating client protocols. You just want to get it done in your client session. Maybe you're tired of constantly having to find new clients. That's really hard work, and it's really draining and depleting. Maybe you've had those thoughts of you should just get a real job. Maybe people are telling you should just get a real job, that this hobby you've taken long enough to get this going. It's clearly just a hobby. Get on with life. Do something that's meaningful, right? That's a really hard place to be. Or maybe you just want to learn from a live iridology teacher who's going to mentor you way beyond the end of the course. That is so, so important. Let's talk about some questions that students have. We're really close to the end here. So, Q&A. You live in a time zone that puts this class at midnight where you live. Can you still sign up and be successful? Yes, Leah did it. I actually have another student who's in France right now. The course is at 1 a.m. her time. She gets up once a week at 1 a.m. to join us for the course. And I'm constantly saluting her for being so amazing. But yeah, you can be successful. We can make it work for you. There are so many ways to do this. How long will it take you? It's going to take you 20 weeks to do the coursework. If you haven't got anatomy under your belt, you need to get that under. Maybe you can do that at the same time. And then I give my students 10 months from course completion to finish certification if they choose to certify. Because what I found is that if students, initially I didn't put a deadline on it, but if students take longer than 10 months, they're not going to do it. So I hold your feet to the fire. If you tell me you want to certify, you get reminders every month or two saying, how are you doing? You should be here by now. You should be doing this by now. You should have this by now. I need your case studies by this date if we're going to get you done on time, right? So you decide. I have a commitment 6. We're just about done. Thank you so much, Lydia, for being with us. How much time do we need to set aside for this? 5 to 7 hours a week to come to class, to study, to join us for office hours. Going to be out of town? Will you fall behind? Nope, not at all, because it's all recorded. How do I know if the course is right for me? If you are a nutritionist or a herbalist or a naturopath, you want a great way to assess your clients, to mesh with what you already know, then this is for you. This is for you. When will you know enough to start learning what you've used, using what you've learned? By lesson 2. I encourage you to start using it by lesson 2. So important. What else do you need to buy for this course? This is important. Do not look online and buy an iridology camera or an iriscope. Where we all start, where I want you to start, is with a lighted magnifier and a separate pen light. That's where I want you to start. That's where we all start. $50 to $75, and you've got it done, right? Don't buy the camera too early. Wait until you know you love it. I post links to things like examples of these on the website a week or two before your class begins, so that you will have a good idea of the kinds of things that would be appropriate. And I encourage you to shop locally. If you don't like it, can you get a refund? No, this course is for professionals. This isn't a hobby course. You need to be serious and committed when you start the course, and committed to finish it. Now, you will have access to all your course recordings for a full 18 months. And then after that, you get migrated to a place where you have access to all the pre-recorded material for as long as I'm teaching the program. And so you can always go back and, if life got in the way and you have an interruption, you can go back and you can still complete the coursework. All right, woo, we did it. We got done. Here's the gift. It looks like a piece of paper, she says. It's because it kind of is. But this is a very special piece of paper, and I'm just looking to find the link here. Remember, we talked a while back about keeping that list of the things that you would work on with the clients to keep you on track. That's exactly what this is. Column number 1, this is where you put the date. So you've got 2 rows for each appointment. Here, if you know iridology, you would write down what iris marker or sclera marker you were working with that informed you, gave you information to help you craft the recommendations. If you don't have sclerology or iridology under your belt, you would just maybe write down the symptoms you were working with, or a little word or two about what the client said that tipped you off to what you needed to do. Then you've got a little bit of space to put in the dietary action, the supplement recommendations, and the lifestyle recommendations. Now, here's the trick. This is for your eyes only. That's the first thing, right? And you're going to have more extensive notes for this client as well. But this is you planning their program. This is what you're going to give your client. If you have to write in microscopic fine writing to actually get everything in that you want your client to do, you're giving them too much homework. You should be able to write in comfortably sized penmanship to and get it all in on the 2 rows. And that's as much homework as your clients can handle, right? So important, so important. If you spend 4 hours creating a program, you know you're giving them way too much information. And sometimes even the information we give in a 1-hour session can be too much. So this is a physical limitation. If it takes more than this amount of space to write down the recommendations, you're giving too much. So I've posted the link in the chat box. You can click on that. It will set you up to receive an email that will have the link to download this particular piece of information. So there's our next date. Again, it starts September 9th, 2021. If you're feeling a little excited, that's great. That probably means you're ready to enroll. So click on the enrollment button. Just know that I limit my classes to no more than 10 students. We've got a few seats taken already. And so as we get closer to the enrollment deadline, which is actually September 6th, Monday, September 6th, if the class fills up before then, we will close enrollment and start a wait list. So if you're ready to get on, then I would really encourage you to pop into there. Now, do you have more questions? If you have more questions and you would like to chat with me about your questions, if you would like for us to have a conversation about, is this really the right course for you? I've just posted a second link in the chat box. This is for you to book an insight call. This is not a sales call. This is not a high pressure call. This is for me to understand where you're coming from, to understand what your goals are, so that we can decide, so that I can help you decide if this is actually the right fit. I've had some people where I've had to say, this is not the right fit for you right now. You really need that anatomy class. You know, we need to get you ready to take this course. And I've had many people where I've gone, yes, you've got exactly what you need. If you're excited, then let's get you enrolled, right? So if you want to have a conversation with me, book a call. Excellent. And there is the registration link one more time. The information link gives you all the info with the registration links. And so I want to thank you so much for being with me. Just before we wrap up, are there any questions? Anything that you would like my input on, my insight on, just before we wrap it up for tonight? And give it about 30 seconds, if that. It takes, 15 to 30 seconds for messages to come across the internet. And I hate to hit the we're done when someone's madly typing. All right. Okay. So there we have it, 20 weeks, small groups, lots of interactions, lots of opportunity built into the course to practice integrating what you already know, so that you actually start in the course using it the way you would be using it in a clinical setting. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions come in. Thank you so much for being with me. And if anyone is sending a question and I'm cutting you off, just book a call. book a call and we'll talk and we'll answer whatever questions and concerns you've got. Or if you're in the Dias Facebook group, pop it into PMs there and I'm happy to answer it for you. Look forward to speaking with you soon and hopefully having you in class. Bye for now.